Well, 20 years ago, The Lion King made its way onto the gaming consoles like the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and now we got a creepypasta based on it with a bizarre hack with odd imagery, typical screamers, and messages making you want to commit suicide. I have to say that this pasta has some really freaky imagery, and it's discussed in such vivid detail that it made me a bit nauseated while reading it, like with Simba losing his limbs or barely being able to move with dragging blood. There are problems in the story, of course, like when Heather touches the screen while there was blood on it apparently, and she gets some on her hand. Wait, what? Also at the end of the story, Satan is referenced for some odd reason. Maybe this hack is implying to be a hellish version of the game or something. Despite this, the story is pretty interesting for the most part. I got so scared about this pasta though that I actually did end up smashing my actual physical copy for Sega Genesis because I was freaked out by it possibly freaking me out on my TV while playing it. Better safe than sorry. There are so many creepypastas out there about haunted video games and things of that nature. I've read them and always just passed them off as just fake stupid creepypasta stories, though they were very entertaining. I never expected something similar to happen to me. It seems like the worst things always tend to happen to those most unsuspecting and cynical, doesn't it? Well, I was at a time of disappointment in my life. I had become very ill and forced to drop out of college. I hated having my dreams put on hold, and I've been suffering from a mild case of depression because of it. But there was still a comfort that can only come from being back home that reassured me a bit. But there was still the bit of boredom I had to deal with. No job, no college, and I hate to say it, but little friends. Most still in college themselves, made each day drag by. The days spent watching TV and old VHS movies in that familiar living room give me some inspiration to find a way to ease my ever-increasing boredom. My VHS and DVD library had slowed down to only my old worn-out Disney movies left unwatched, so I decided to watch one of my all-time favorites, The Lion King. The colorful, cute lion cubs reminded me of an almost forgotten piece of my past. It was the old 1994 Lion King PC video game I used to play consistently as a child. My mom and I used to spend hours trying to win that old game. The flood of old memories sent me walking into my old bedroom to the ancient computer that still sat on a desk in the corner. I had been so proud of that old computer when I first bought it. At the age of 11, I had saved up enough of my allowance to buy it myself. It was heartwarming to see the old startup screen and hear the old jingle as Windows XP started up. The bulky old compact Prisal grown to life, and I clicked the start button to search for my old games. Sadly, the game folder was barren and empty. Disappointed, I walked in to ask my mom what happened to all the games. She looked a little sad, probably seeing dissatisfaction in my eyes. She told me since I had purchased a brand new laptop a month or so ago, my dad was going to sell the old computer. He had taken all the old games and documents and removed them. She then suggested I ask my dad if he had saved any of them. Later that night, my dad returned from his job at the factory, tired and worn. He flopped on the couch to do what he did to relax, look up stuff on his laptop. So I walked over and asked him what the fate of my childhood memories had been. He regretted to say that he didn't think I would care about them anymore and had to leave them. I was clearly saddened by that. I had been really looking forward to skydiving into an ocean of nostalgia, hating to see his little girl upset. He said he would go online and try to download as many of the old games as he could from freeware sites and things of that nature. Gladly, my dad did find and download the 1994 Lion King Sega game, my old favorite. Now, this game isn't like the modern Disney games out there. It wasn't a babyish activity center or a storybook game. It was a story, yes, but it was an action game. The gist of it was that you started out as young Simba, as he defeats innocent villains and animals such as chameleons, porcupines, frogs, spiders, vultures, and the horror villains, hyenas. Young Simba could defeat these adversaries by simply jumping on them, except the porcupines, he had to growl to flip them over, and then jump on them. Older Simba was oddly more violent. He could slash, maul, and flip his enemies, some of them even showing small amounts of blood flying from them with each hit. Nothing gory, and you can never see any injuries on his enemies, but at the age of 4, that seemed like a major carnage. The next morning I was glad to have the whole house to myself to play the game again. My dad was at work and my mom was off to Lexington, Kentucky to help my almost 80-year-old grandma. It was times like this that it pays to have no siblings. So I grabbed a bowl of M&Ms and some sweet tea and retreated to my room for the day. My dad had installed the game into the bulky old gray and black computer the night before, but haven't seen if it had worked or not. I prayed it did as I clicked on the file. It worked to my delight, and when I saw the grainy startup screen, a picture of Pride Walk with Red Flag holding up baby Simba, I pressed enter to start the game. Tamal appeared on the screen and said the old familiar words.
It starts.
I worked my way through the colorful levels with ease. I remembered every trick and bonus. Everything went well, and I was having good old-fashioned fun like I used to as a little kid. I made it to the last level, the Pride Walk level, where adult Simba battles Scar. I made it halfway through the level, battling Scar 2 of the 3 times and killing off hyena after hyena. I was having a perfect game until I made one mistake. I misjudged a jump and missed the platform I was aiming for, sending Simba plunging into the darkness in between. That's when things started to go wrong. Instead of just fading to black and starting the level over like it was supposed to, the screen began flashing random colors, mainly red, black, and purple, and a sound that wasn't supposed to be in the game. I should know, I played it hundreds of times, and I memorized every part of it. The sound was from the movie. It was from the infamous stampede scene where Medusa fell to his doom. It was Simba's scream, no, you know. Then there was a loud screeching sound, so loud I jumped and turned down my speakers. I figured that this was just a hacked version of the game, and someone thought it would make the game better to add sound clips from the movie. But then, instead of returning to the level I was on, the game restarted from the beginning. That made me annoyed since I had gotten so far, but then the startup screen changed. Instead of the cheery screen I remember from my childhood, it was dark, blurry, and odd-colored. It almost looked like a night shot of the original screen, but I thought it might just be a glitch and pressed start anyway. Instead of Timon saying his normal phrase, there was a strip of red writing which seemed to flash and twist on the screen. It said a quote that I recognized and actually loved. The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and the other one begins? A quote from my favorite author, Edgar Allan Poe. I was actually a little happy to see my favorite quote, but couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Why was it a Disney game? And I knew for sure it didn't belong here, but I played anyway. The first level was all wrong. First off, I had no lives left when I should have had 8, and the sky was pitch black. The first level was usually a cheery sunny level. Worst of all, young cub Simba was lying down in an unnatural crumpled position. He was bloody and shaking. This wasn't a Disney norm at all. For the heck of it, I tried to move him with the arrow keys, and he reached his arm out slowly and dragged himself along the ground, leaving a trail of crimson blood behind him, like a slug leaves a trail of slime. The progression was slow, but the crisp autumn weather outside made me excited for Halloween, so I decided to try and play this disturbed version of my favorite game. When I needed to jump, the half-dead lion cub jumped almost like normal, except each jump, he lost a body part. The body part of him fell into the crevice he was jumping. Each jump made a crumpled hero bloodier and bloodier. At the end of the level, the hyena was different too. His eyes glowed red, and he looked as if he had been slashed multiple times. I defeated him with 2 jumps, just in time as Simba's last leg fell off. I wonder what awaited for me on the next level, as the first one faded to black. The I can't wait to be king level was upside down and seemed to be melting on the screen, as well being darker colored than it should. Simba was back to the original state he was on the first disturbed level. He dragged along as he made his way to the rhino. He jumped on the rhino's head, his tail falling off along the way, and the rhino flipped him up into the trees, into the arms of the monkeys. This is the part where Simba was supposed to jump on the heads of giraffes over water to the other side, but there was a problem. The giraffes were beheaded, bloodily, but amazingly disgustingly detailed. I could see the bones sticking out. I thought whoever hacked this game had even more of a dark side than me. But I wondered how Barrett Simba could get across the water, which was in this version, red blood. But he jumped from giraffe to giraffe by clinging to the necks. The blood made him slip off quickly, so I had to jump quicker and quicker to keep him from falling in the water. Later in the level, the ostrich he was supposed to ride was beheaded and skinned with frightening realism. It looked more like a foal I had seen taken at fur farms of dead animals. The ostrich lurched in an art-distorted way as it ran. The rest of the level was about the same. The monkeys beheaded, and the tree on fire, and Simba crawled through the upside-down madness. As the level faded, the screeching sound returned as something completely unexpected. It was Mefusa's face, but instead of the gold color as he should be, he was black and his eyes glowed green. He opened his mouth and said in a hissing voice,
"Scar is innocent. It was me."
What did that mean? Was this twisted game trying to pass off that Mefusa was supposed to have let go of the cliff on purpose? I don't know why, but I was disturbed by that thought. Don't be stupid, I thought. Don't let a stupid game make you upset about fictional cartoon lions. Despite the nervousness I was experiencing, I continued to the elephant graveyard level. This one was right side up, thank goodness, and Simba was surprisingly normal, staying up straight like he was supposed to. Maybe the hacker got bored and decided to leave this level alone. My thoughts were proven wrong as soon as I thought them. The elephant graveyard was strangely devoid of life. No hyenas came to attack me like they were supposed to. I thought of that as an easy out and began to run through the game. As I moved, I realized it wasn't going to be that easy. A scream ripped loudly through the speakers in the monitor. Not just the screen, but the whole monitor shook. That freaked me out, but I figured it was probably just vibrating from the loudness of the screams. Anyway, I had a new thing to worry about. The ground was literally crumbling under Simba's feet. I had to keep running through the desolate graveyard to keep from falling into the unknown black below me. As I ran, I noticed that the spots that were supposed to be hyenas instead had bloody skinned corpses instead. And the same hissing voice of Mefusa I heard before sounded as I passed each one.
"Death is cruel to the just and the unjust."
He repeated it over and over as the scream built up louder and louder behind it. Then the whole monitor started shaking again, more and more violently. Then very realistic blood started dripping down the screen. So realistic I was tempted to reach out and touch it. I indulged in my temptation and was petrified as my finger became covered in sticky crimson blood. As can be expected, I screamed and ran from the room. I ran into the bathroom and slammed the door shut. My hands were trembling as I reached for the light switch. I half expected the distorted Mufasa face to be in front of me as I flipped on the light. Of course it wasn't. So I sat down curled into a ball. I suddenly hated to be alone. I yearned for my parents to come home. It didn't help that I could still hear that scream from the other room, my room, where I had to sleep. As frightened as I was, I decided that I had to go back and turn off the game. So I mustered whatever courage was left in me and walked slowly back into the room. I was almost afraid to turn and look at the computer in the dark corner of the room, but when I did, I saw that the blood was gone. Maybe I had just let the disturbing game get into my head and I had hallucinated the blood. I mean, it was just a game, right? Weirder still is that the game had paused on its own, as if it known that I fled the room. Maybe in my panic, I had hit the enter button on the keyboard and just hadn't known it, but I sure didn't remember it. That thought was proven false as soon as my bottom made contact with the seat, for as soon as I sat down, the game started up. The screaming thankfully stopped for the time being, and curiosity was urging me to keep going. I knew my dad was going to take away the defective game off as soon as he heard about it, so this was my only chance to see what happened next. So I kept going. I finished the crumbling elephant graveyard level, and I started up the stampede level, and prepared for the stampede level, and whatever dark twist was next. But to my surprise, everything was normal in this level. The sky was blue, and the rocky canyon was a bright tan, just as I remembered it. Half of me was thankful, and the other half, the darker half I hide from most people, was bored. It was at the end of the level that things changed. After Simba escaped the wildebeest, the screen cut to black abruptly, and then continued to play a scene from the movie. Well, sort of. It was the scene where Mufasa was climbing up the rocks after saving Simba from the stampede. But then something different happened. It cut to Simba staring at his dad struggling to climb up the canyon. This scene wasn't in the movie, though it was animated in just as good quality as the real movie. Simba was crying as if he knew his dad wasn't going to make it. Sobbing realistically, he then stopped suddenly and turned his face towards the screen. His eyes were empty and motionless as he stared up at me. Then he stood up and walked forward. The camera angle switched to behind him and revealed to what he was walking to. The edge. The cliff. What is this? I could only watch in horror as he walked off the cliff, to the stampede below. Then the screen cut to Mufasa's face. He saw it. He saw Simba fall to his death. His eyes were filled with tears, and he looked up at his brother, Scar, grinning down at him.
What are you gonna do, brother?
Scar asked menacingly. His eyes glowing an odd red, and his paws dripping blood.
What have you to live for?
Nothing, Mufasa answered. Then he turned his face to the screen.
No one does.
Then he let go of the cliff and fell. Then it showed Scar laughing, his face slowly morphing into a hideous skull, pieces of flesh clinging to it. His eyes started to drip blood as the screen faded black around the skull. Then he whispered,
It's Trophy 2, Heather.
Then he chuckled and disappeared. Once again I found myself running from the room, this time in hysterics. If I thought I was trembling before, then this was my own personal earthquake. In the bathroom, I ended up vomiting into the toilet. Then I just sat there whispering, It's not real, it's not real. Tears ran down my face, like the blood had from scars. How did the game just say my name? That's not normal. Not right. But I was the adult in this house at the time. It was up to me to go back into the room and turn the demonic game off immediately. So I stomped into my bedroom angrily. I will not let a game, control me. I glared towards the screen and noticed that Scar was gone. It was sitting there on the Simba's XL level. Very normal looking. It even had the appropriate sound for the game. Once again, curiosity got the better of me, and I dismissed the movie clip as my imagination gained the better of me. So I continued to play the game level. I was stupid. I know that now. But I wasn't one to get freaked out that easily over things like that. I was the type who craved scary things. Loved them. So I played the game with a cautious but curious attitude. I was just waiting for something else strange to happen. Not hoping for it like before, more like watching a video online waiting for the screamer. The level was perfectly normal. Whoever hacked this game had a twisted sense of humor, I thought, poorly. Lulling you into a false sense of security, then freaking you out in a whole new way. I knew it was coming, but I still jumped when it happened. The Simba's exile level ended normally as the hyenas watched Simba escape through the thorns, yelling, "If you ever come back, we'll kill ya!" But then it happened. Something freaky. The Hakuna Matata level started, but Simba couldn't move. It was like the game was locked up, except he was moving. Not running like I wanted him to, but shaking his head over and over and over again, as if he was trying to shake the bad thoughts from his head. Then suddenly, he looked straight ahead, and then fell to the ground. Then he passed out, only his eyes rolled out of his head and across the green jungle grass. Then the image twisted in on itself and faded to black. Then abruptly it switched directly to the next level, skipping Hakuna Matata completely. It would only seem fitting that a game as dark as this skipped the happiest level. So now Simba is an adult. This was the level representing him going at night to see Rafiki. That's an adult. He had his new powers of slashing and mauling. I mentioned before the brief, mild violence that normally was in the adult Simba levels. Well, this was much, much worse. When Simba mauled the leopard was ripped to pieces, and its body was left in a bloody mess, and pieces piled on top of each other. Each one he killed off was murdered in the same merciless, violent way. I should have known something like that was coming. Then in the end, when he found Rafiki at the pool of water, and Mufasa appeared in the sky, Simba started shaking. Not randomly, but in a pattern, and sobs sounded and beat to the shakes. Then Mufasa reached down, opened his mouth wide, and Simba just walked in and disappeared. Rafiki then looked into the screen and whispered, "The circle of life is a lie. All die, all perish. Your time is drawing nearer." At least he didn't say my name again. That was a relief. The game skipped 2 whole levels, and I found myself at the start of the last level, Pride Rock. It seemed normal until I moved Simba forward. Instead of immediately finding Scar as he is supposed to, he just ran through the empty level. No hyenas, no fire, no Scar. It was like this until I got to the very top of Pride Rock, where Simba and Scar are supposed to have the final battle. I was shocked at who was waiting at the top. Mufasa? He didn't even have a character in the game. I wondered for a second if I was supposed to fight him. He was Simba's father after all, but Mufasa leapt into Simba and began to maul him, violently ripping off Simba's foreleg. He flung the leg off a Pride Rock. I moved Simba and hobbled to his dad and jumping, mauling him as well. The battle was pretty even, Mufasa and Simba ripping off piece after piece of each other. After about 10 minutes of fighting, I lost control of them. Nothing I did affected the fight. They were fighting on their own now. Suddenly, Simba jumped onto his father, causing them to both somersault off the edge of Pride Rock to the doom. Then the screen flashed several times, the screen returned, and the screen switched to a very realistic picture of Mufasa and Simba's mangled bodies, lying in a heap under Pry Rock. Then the screen twisted on itself again, and Scar's skull appeared in front of the picture. I screamed when the skull spoke.
Mother, Satan lives in the depths of each good soul. You can't escape him. You cannot fight him. Give up before he tears you apart.
Then the screen flashed and showed a new picture. It was me, sitting in front of the screen. The computer went black and shut off. As much as I tried, the computer wouldn't turn on again. I still can't get it to turn on. Every night I see those images, I hear those words.
Give up before he tears you apart.
Sometimes in the middle of the night, I look at the computer and that skull is there on the screen. I can feel something in my house now. It's present. My mother and father can't feel it. Their innocence hasn't been taken away from them as mine has. This is why I'm writing this. My dreams have been turned to nightmares, my sweet memories into traumatizing ones. Nothing is left of me anymore, and I'm going to take Scar's advice. These are my last words, and I feel compelled to ask you, what are you gonna do? What do you have to live for?